Hello, winners, and welcome to Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. We have a very special guest today who's going to bring an interesting perspective for you winners and coming from the sports analytics industry as well as other aspects. But before we get into the introduction of our special guest, please be sure you share, subscribe, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform. We're on all of them. And also want to give a shout out today to today's sponsor, Nick Menard, and his 1% Push, as well as his Amazon best-selling book, Mindset is My Degree. Thank you, Nick Menard, for sponsoring today's episode.
You're very welcome. Hello, winners.
Hello. All right. Would you like the honors of introducing our special guest?
Absolutely. So it's my honor today to introduce our guest, Neil Schwartz. He's president of the SBRnet, Inc., has over 25 years of marketing and consumer research experience focusing entirely on sports, fitness, and active listening categories. He's regarded as an expert in the trends affecting sports fans across both team and individual sports. He leverages his extensive knowledge and experience in data analytics to generate insights and craft stories that industry leaders need to make informed decisions. As president of SBRnet, Neil is dedicated to expanding the use of data within academics and related commercial fields, such as sports management, sport business, sport marketing, and sports analytics. So once again, thank you for joining us today, Neil. It's a real pleasure to have you.
First of all, Nick and Will, thank you very much for inviting me on the show. We're going to spend the next half hour or so talking about my favorite subject, sports. But, clearly, my focus and my attention has been on the data side of sports and specifically on the business side of data side. I couldn't tell you who are the best players to put out at the end of a game or any of that stuff. I'm not into on-field analytics or team analytics. I'm really about helping teams grow revenue, helping teams grow fans, help them, whatever type of marketing help really they need, sponsorships, things like that. That's really where we shine. I've been doing this, as you said, for about 25 years. I've done various types of marketing research, but it's all been on research. It's really been kind of my niche, so to speak. And, this enthusiasm, I love what I do and I do what I love. And anytime you can love what you do and do what you love, guess what? It's not like you're working. And
time flies.
It does. And in fact, people ask me about my enthusiasm. I mean, obviously I'm, not as young as I'd like to, be, but hey, you can't stop time. So, but every day I'm motivated by 3 words, guys. And those words are sports are fun. We're not curing cancer here. We're not gonna, solve any great problems here. We're talking about sports, and in my opinion, what's better to talk about than sports? I mean, it evokes emotion. It evokes, everything. In my opinion, you see people go from, what is it, the thrill of victory to the agony of defeat,
That's right.
and I love talking about everything in between that. So
That's fantastic.
I love what I do.
I love that. So I checked your website and we had a chance to chat a little bit earlier as well. And
Sure.
now the first question I have, because I'm sure a lot of our winners and
Sure.
audience are looking for it. So how did you get started in this industry? Because everybody loves sports, but not a lot of people are actually interested in all the side things, the data and stuff like
Yeah.
that. How did you get there?
It's a good question, actually, and it really started about 30 years ago when I was working for actually not in the business of sports, but I started to realize how important it was from a marketing and a business standpoint to be able to work with facts, be able to work with data. I don't want to hear what your gut's telling you. I want to hear what the data's telling you. And for the first 5 years, I worked for a couple of companies, mostly in the cable TV industry, one being Comcast, but I learned the value of market research and data. And then, about 5 years after that, I kind of turned my attention to sports. And, look, I love sports. There's no question about it. I can talk about it. For the bulk of my early career on the research side, I was focused on the the side that really looks at trends in terms of footwear, apparel, equipment, things like that. My company, SportScan, actually collected what they call POS data, point of sales data, for the sports industry. We would aggregate that data back and then sell it back to manufacturers, to retailers, to really let them understand what's selling, what are the trends. And luckily, they would rely on me to help them interpret the data, because that's really what's important, guys. Data for data's sake is a wonderful thing, but you know what? It's the insights that data drives, and then it's the story that insights tells that's really important. And that's really what I stress with people. Random data point, okay, good to have, nice, but tell me a story. Tell me what it is and why do I need to know it, why it matters to me. And that's really what I focus on. And I've really, like to believe, I've developed a great reputation in the industry as someone that understands the practical nature of data. Look, I'm not a data scientist. I never will be. Am I good with Excel? Sure. Am I good? Can I do some, basic math in my head? Am I a decent, yeah, I am. But that's not what this is all about for me. This is all about, for me, looking at data and looking at graphs and charts and then be able to tell a story. Be able to look at, what happened with live attendance in 2020 due to the pandemic, and then understand how that affected sports in general. The data point is, the pandemic was part of our lives. It affected all of us. How did it affect sports? And then what do I do about it? And that's really, where I like to believe I bring my expertise and I can bring, my uniqueness, to this field. Because let's face it, data can be boring as hell for just data's sake. It is. I mean, I've seen more people like their eyes just glaze over as I'm going into talking about and all that. But when I step back and tell the story, all of a sudden you're seeing people nodding their heads and shaking their heads. And you know what? That's the reaction I want. That is the reaction I want.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. And very well said, because you're right. It is about the story it tells. I'm just kind of curious, about how, when you're approaching it, because obviously when you're working with raw data, depending on how you do the query, right?
Sure.
You can kind of maybe guide certain outcomes. How do you limit bias so that you are getting to the facts and then telling a story from those facts and limiting objective biases?
So let me just tell you a little bit about how we do what we do. And I promise I won't get too sciencey for your audience, but I think it's important for them to understand what I do. And then I think it becomes a little bit more clear. So our primary area of expertise, and the area that we provide the most data on, is focused on sports fans. And we do an annual study every year in the first quarter, so it's coming up in January, where we will literally go out and interview over 7,000 sports fans that from a nationally representative sample of people here in the USA 13 years and older. So here's my best analogy for this. When an architect or an engineer wants to build a bridge or a building, the first thing they do is, after they draw the plans up, is they make a model. And they make a model to scale. Well, that's kind of what I do with my research. I build a model of the United States population for persons, 13 years and older. And how do I do it? Well, I use the census data because it's basically well regarded and nationally represented. Not like I'm using some data that people don't know, but I build a model of the USA based on age, income, ethnicity, geography, marital status, and presence of children in the household. I think I got it all. So then what we do is then we literally collect our data based on what that model tells us to. So as an example, if 24%, let's say, of the U.S. is African American, and I'm not saying it is, so I don't want anybody to get crazy here, but I will collect that number within my sample, and then what I will do is I will balance it to make sure I have also the right distribution of age, of income, of geography, of marital status, and presence of children in the household. And once I do my collection, my raw data, use that word, raw data, I then put it through a process called data weighting. So I weight that data up to represent the entire U.S. population ages 13 and above. So what I have is a database of information of over 7,000 responses, sports fans, covering 23 separate sports, team sports, college sports, minor league sports, individual sports, auto racing, you name it. We pretty much have it covered. Doing a big job now with women's sports also. It's really growing. So what we do is each person that interacts with our survey, and it's an internet-based survey, so the survey's done via the internet, and we literally collect over 70 data points on each person. So Nick, if you happen to get one of my surveys, you would be basically being asked, obviously your basic demographic information and things like that. But, we would ask you what your favorite football team is. We would ask you what your favorite basketball team is, what your favorite hockey team is. We would ask you all these questions. We would ask you if you go to games. And if you do, how many do you go to? We would ask you, do you prefer to watch games on cable or satellite, or would you rather watch them via streaming? We'd ask you if you gamble on games. Sports gambling, big area right now. Sports tourism. I don't know if you guys know this, and this is like I think one of the best kept secrets in sports, or maybe it's a lousy kept secret, now that I think about it. Sports tourism. Those are people that like to go and support their teams. So you guys, I know, are in Central Florida. Let's say, hypothetically, Tampa is going to, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if you're fans of them, are going to play the Miami Dolphins. You might want to come down here to Miami to watch them play. Well, when you do, you come down, you drive in this case because it's not that far, but you stay in a hotel, you buy tickets, you spend money, you contribute to the overall economic impact, for that. It's a $30 billion industry. Yeah. $30 billion. Yeah. It's big. And so we cover all of these kinds of things. Right now, I get a lot of questions, and we talk a lot about sports gambling. Unfortunately, sports gambling is in the news for a lot of the wrong reasons. Yeah. But that's a kind of another issue. But it's amazing. In fact, so we use what they call a nationally representative panel. I don't own the panel of people that we talk to. And it's not the same 7,000 people every year. It's a different 7,000 people every year. But every year my panel company calls me and they say, I don't know if you're just really good at writing a survey or if people just love sports. By the way, it's the latter. But over 70% of the people that start the survey finish the survey. That is unheard of in our world.
That's high.
Unheard of. So, we really, people love talking about sports. I mean, if you saw the survey and it's, hey, what's your favorite football team? What's your favorite college team? Everybody loves to answer these questions. And then, and once you start, it's hard to stop. And so that's really what we do. So every year we collect the data. We then we have to put it through a certain amount of, let's say, data cleaning and data, to maintain integrity and all that good stuff. Sure. And then we literally provide it back in an aggregated format, so there's no privacy violations or anything like that. But the idea is that teams, leagues, colleges and universities, brands can all access this data to better understand the habits and behaviors of America's sports fans.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And as Nick mentioned, we were perusing your site and I saw like a recent blog post about media. Really interesting. And just how the emphasis, at least my takeaway from reading the blog post was, hey, people aren't exactly consuming more, like when you look at a percentage basis, but it's the quality, but there's so many different formats that's coming at them. And and things like that. So I found that interesting. I
mean, when I look at the overall fandom trends here in the United States, for the most part, most of the sports that we cover, if I look at their year over year, let's say net change, and then I compare that to, let's say, a 3-year rolling average, most of the sports are pretty much kind of on trend, for lack of a better word. There are a couple, though, that are way off the trend in a positive way, I might add. One of them is Formula One.
Oh, yeah.
Formula One is just growing incredibly well, and their year-over-year trend far outweighs their 3-year average, so good for them. The WNBA, no sport that I measure has literally done better in increasing the acceleration of their level of fans than the WNBA. I mean, I look at this chart and I'm thinking, I almost want to like shake my head. I mean, their year-over-year change, I mean, literally was close to, they gained almost 50% more fans from 23 to 24 than they have over the last 3 years. So they are doing an amazing job. And we could, by the way, we could talk about that for a whole show in and of itself. But, we see other sports, even like, the NFL. Look, the NFL is the granddaddy among all sports. Make no mistake. They have over 170 million, that's 170 million fans here in the United States.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Nobody is even close.
Right.
I mean, anybody that says, oh, baseball is America's pastime, I call BS on that.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, they definitely agree.
That's awesome. So I have a little different kind of question for you in mind. So a lot of our audience are entrepreneur, business owner, or wannabe entrepreneur. What kind of advice could you give our audience about the fact that you start 25, 30 years ago? I'm pretty sure you have a lot of validation, changes going through your business plan and stuff like that. Can you share some of the example of what you've been through to grow the way you are today? That may help the audience.
The interesting thing is I've worked with a number of entrepreneurs over the years, and I've worked with a number of also big businesses over the years. So I really kind of have a good perspective. But I can tell you, there's a couple of what I would call universal truths. Number one is don't be afraid of the data. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've sat and watched that show Shark Tank, and I'm yelling at, where's your data? Where's your data? I'm like, come on, guys, where's your data? And sometimes people have it, sometimes they don't. I believe that using data is kind of like a GPS for business. While it's not going to be the only thing, and nor should it be, by the way, guys, you should reflect your own, your own experiences and your own observations and things like that. But you shouldn't get bogged down on, what your gut tells you. You should really be looking at what the data tells you. And you don't want to just look at one data point or one point in time. You want to look at a trend. Here's an example. A number of years ago, I was working with they're a shoe company, and they're small. And they came up with an interesting idea. The idea, and I'm not violating any confidentiality, so don't worry about any of that. But they came up with an idea to build or create a soccer shoe built specifically for women. All right? Okay, so I just said sounds like a good idea. So what did I tell them to do first? I said, let's start with the data. Because you're going to go out looking for money, and you're going to make a pitch to venture capital, and you're going to be making pitches to, investors. What are you going to tell them? Well, why don't you first tell them about how the sport of soccer is growing here in the United States? And, and growing amongst what age demographics, children, young people, whatever it might be. Then you want to go even deeper into the data. Let's look at what's going on amongst women. Are women growing? Because you want to always kind of, again, use data to lay the foundation for your, for your plan. Then you want to go back and look at, and this is data, by the way, that I have also. You want to look and see how many pairs of soccer shoes were sold last year. How much revenue did they generate? What was the average selling price? And all of this stuff you want to be able to put into the mix. When I talk to people also, there's a couple of things I like to tell them. Number one is think of the data process like a big funnel, right? You throw a bunch of stuff into the top of the funnel, okay? Some of the stuff you may not need, may be useless, but some will be very useful, and you want that data to drop down to the bottom of the funnel into your bowl, your data bowl. Because what you want to do is you want to be selective about the data you use. But I always encourage entrepreneurs to start with data. And in most cases, in some cases, actually, it's a little bit mystical for people. What do you mean? What kind of data should I use? What do I do with it? How do I interpret this? How do I, entrepreneur came to me a couple of years ago and had an idea for a product. Yet the category that the idea was for was actually declining. There were less people playing it year over year, and then less people playing it over a longer trended period. Now, but we went in and looked a little further, and I said, look, that doesn't mean you can't make money by generating 1, 2, 3, 5% market share. Do you think over the course of 5 years, you would be able to generate 2 or 3% market share out of this particular market? He says, yes. My product is that good. So even though the category might be declining, there's still room. There's still opportunity. You can't ever just discount things just right away. You know, right now, in fact, I mean, I don't know if you guys pickleball players by any chance? Either one of you play?
No, but that's funny. I was going to ask you if you analyze pickleball because I know.
Yeah, we do. Great. Look, pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America, maybe even in the world for that matter. And we have the data to back that up. Now, it's not growing as fast as it was. In fact, what we saw is something that I had never seen before. Pickleball did something I like to call the double. They literally doubled their participation for 3 years in a row. That's never happened in my lifetime. I can't think of any other sport where that's ever happened. But now it's starting to decelerate a bit. Look, it's still growing. There's no question about it. But again, if you're a company that's going to manufacture, you know, obviously there's rackets, there's balls, there's shoes, there's clothes, you know, but, you know, is anyone manufacturing specific, let's say, protective gear? I don't know. You know, there are people making like little goggles and stuff, but I don't know if they're making them, let's say, pickleball specific. But I know if I was, you know, I was looking at that category, that's where I would look. No question about it. So, you know, it's always about, again, understanding the category, understanding what the, you know, some people like to call that the addressable market size. Yeah. And then being able to understand, you know, what can I capture of that addressable market? And it really comes down to the data. And you know what? Again, I sit and, you know, it's funny. I sit and watch Shark Tank like I'm watching a baseball, like a ball game. I'll be yelling at the TV. My wife thinks I'm an absolute lunatic. Seriously. I mean, I love sports. I do. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm a long-suffering Miami Dolphins fan. But I will say I'm also an ecstatic Florida Panthers fan. They've won the Stanley Cup 2 years in a row. I'm a season ticket holder, so I do love that. But the Dolphin situation has been just miserable. But again, I yell at the TV, I'll scream at the TV, and all that. And my wife's like, dude, what's up with you? I'm like, come on, we're married 23 years. You don't know what's up with me by now? You know? But I'm the same way when I watch shows like Shark Tank or, you know, any of these investment shows. I really do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know you're also teaching at you know, different schools and things like that. So maybe you can say something about that one and also about your podcast. I know you have a
Sure.
So if you can share with the audience a little bit what you do about that.
Well, you know, data is an interesting thing, and for a lot of people, you have to kind of demystify it a little bit because, you know, people data, they get all crazy. Yeah. I come in most of my schools. So currently our biggest vertical or our biggest source of revenue comes from colleges and universities around the world. And they buy my data so that they can use it in class with students. Because colleges and universities would rather use real data in real situations than have to use, let's say, old data, fake data, whatever it might. They want the real deal. And that's what I give them. But I don't just sell them the data. I come in and I talk to students about how to use it properly. I come in with students, let's say older students, let's say juniors, seniors, and even grad students. We do case studies. I mean, I worked on a really interesting case study just recently with a school down here in Florida so we took a look at, you know, what sports are growing from a fan perspective. And I said Formula One. So I said, okay, let's talk about Formula One for a minute. So there are currently 3 races here in the United States. And we know that Formula One year over year is growing faster than their trended average. Mm-hmm. So it's a good situation. We know next year that Cadillac will be joining the grid. They will be the first American homegrown rate team in Formula One. It's an amazing thing. They're spending over $1 billion for this. A lot of money. Oh yeah. So, and I've heard Formula One talk about this a lot, but they really, they feel that if they can capture a greater market of the American market, that it will increase their sponsor revenue and, yada, yada, yada. They'll generate more revenue. Okay, I get it. So if I was Formula One and there are 3 races here in the U.S. and I wanted to put a 4th race, where would I put it? And use data to make your argument. Just don't say, oh, let's put it in New York City. There's zillions of people and all that. Well, guess what? New York City would not be the best place to put a Formula One race. Yeah, there's a lot of fans. There's a lot of people. But for a lot of reasons, New York doesn't work. Yeah. But so what did we do? We went and allowed them, we used data to help them, let's say, name 5 or 6 cities or 5 or 6 areas, and then narrow it down and then tell your story. Why you feel that this particular spot would be a good place for another Formula One race. By the way, one of my choices, actually 2 of my Michigan, even though there is, they have a NASCAR race in Chicago, but I thought Michigan was a really good choice. And then the other one I want to say was somewhere in the Midwest. I forgot where exactly I thought, but it was, so again, but I let data tell me where to go. So, that's what we do. We just don't give people data. We like to support the data, how to use it, and towards that goal, you mentioned my podcast. Yeah. So we have a podcast. It's called My First Job in Sports. So, inevitably I'm in class and I'm at the end of my presentation or whatever. Any questions? Always one wise ass kid. Hey, can you help me get a job? I'm like, dude, I'm not an employment cert. I can't help. But after getting that question more than, 20 times, I said, at my partner at the time, who I've separated from, I own the business 100% now. I said, how can we help students without changing the nature of our business model? Right. So I came up with this idea for a podcast called My First Job in Sports. And what we've been able to do is to use our existing colleges and universities to recommend students that have gotten jobs in sports. So we interview people who are on their first through 4th job in sports. Mm-hmm. And we ask them, what did you do to get that job? Because what's the best way to find out how somebody got a job? Ask the people that are in that job already, and they'll tell you. They will tell you every time. They'll tell you who they networked this, how they did it, how they overcame shyness when they went to conferences, how they were able to develop their LinkedIn, network, all these things. And you know what? Working. We have, we have a nice number of average, we average around 1,100 downloads per episode, which is okay. I mean, I'd like to see it higher so I could sell some ads like you guys do, but everybody loves it. It's a great concept, and all that. But the interesting thing is we took the concept and actually spun it off to an event. I also have an event, in fact, over my head, I think. It's called Get in the Game. Yeah. And we just had it, in fact, 2 weeks ago. Get in the Game is focused on helping students of color get jobs in the sports business. Okay. So what we've done is we've even narrowed down the niche a little bit more, narrowed down the focus a little bit more, but it's a wonderful event. It's really a labor of love for me and my partner in the event, Yusuf Khan. He runs a blog called First and Pen, which is focused on telling stories of sports from a perspective of people of color. And I have to admit, I've learned a lot. And it's just, it's been a labor of love. So we're really all about providing the data and then providing the kind of support that people need. Now, we also have commercial clients. I have brands. I have leagues. I have teams. They don't need, they don't care about my first job in sports. What they care about is, how can I put this data? How can I implement this data? How can I use it strategically to help me grow my market? One of my companies that I work with are a large hat manufacturer. In fact, there's a good chance they manufacture that one you're wearing right now. And, they're looking to expand their markets. So, what are they doing? They're using my data as a way to be able to kind of guide them. They're looking at licensed merch sales, specifically hats. So they want to understand, do we need to make more hats focused for women? Do we need to make more hats focused for men? Do we make, do we want to, we're noted for baseball, but do we want to expand out? Do we want, more hats for hockey, more hats for fans of, college basketball? You can go on and on and on. But the idea is just putting that data to good use, and that's really what we're all about.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Fun fact. So when I was 13,
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get Jordans, but there was no way my parents were going to pay for Jordans. So my first job in sports was my first job ever at 13 years old as a caddy. So
Really?
I caddied.
Did you get those Jordans?
I did get those Jordans. Yeah.
Good boy.
Jordan 4s.
Good man. I had a big collection of sneakers. My daughter used to call me the oldest living sneakerhead. Since the pandemic, I've divested pretty much most of my collection. They were just taking up a lot of space, and so I don't really, I'm not let's just say I am a former sneakerhead.
Yeah.
But I met a woman, professor at Temple University, and, she told me she's got about 50 pairs. I mean, in the 2 days I was with her, she wore like 3 different pairs of Jordans.
Wow.
I was like, I was so jealous.
Yeah.
But I what am I going to do?
Friend in Belgium, he had 14 different pairs of Jordan 1s.
Really?
So he basically had a color shoe that can match almost any feasible outfit he would wear. But they're great, and they kind of had a resurgence, which is really cool.
Well, they've actually really never gone away.
Yeah. But some of those older styles, I mean.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like StockX.
Yes.
It's a sneaker exchange.
Yeah.
Actually, Josh Luber, actually a friend of mine. Well, no, I don't talk to him much anymore now that he's a multimillionaire. But Josh started StockX and really kind of grew this whole secondary marketplace for athletic footwear. I mean, it was, about the Jordans, and it also became about the Yeezys, when Kanye West wasn't a complete psycho.
Yeah.
And went completely nuts. But, it was Yeezys, it was Jordans. And then, look, there's also other streetwear that's gotten very popular over the years. And, but I had one pair of Jordans, and of course I don't have them anymore, but like you said, they were a pair of Jordan 2s.
Yeah.
And they were in almost the color of that shirt you're wearing, the blue, the Carolina blue.
Those,
yeah, they were sweet. They really were.
That is awesome. Yeah, but, I learned about StockX exactly from my oldest son who bought a pair of Yeezys. I didn't even know what Yeezy was at the time.
Yeah, I never got into the Yeezy thing. The funny thing is, back before I bought SBRnet, I was really involved in the sneaker side of things. And, I was frequently quoted, in the press, frequently called on. I was on Bloomberg all the time talking about footwear and sneakers and all that. I mean, look, dude, what could be any better than talking about sneakers?
I know.
Really.
Growing, having that where it exploded,
I know.
And because it was really, I mean, well, Nike and others, Converse tried to start, obviously they were kind of like maybe at the forefront, but it just blew up in the 80s.
The interesting thing is that, and, look, I'm obviously in my 60s and I've been around a lot. I have never seen a situation like the Jordan brand. Right. Michael Jordan hasn't played, a game in 20 years, 25 years? I don't even know at this point.
Yeah, it might
but
be.
Yet, every kid knows what they are. Every kid, wants them, buys them, talks about them. Yeah. Jordan is a one-in-a-kind phenomenon. Really is. So.
Oh, yeah. Cultural icon.
Yes, he is.
It's been awesome. We're going to give you the softest of softball layup for the last question to bring us home here, Neil. But
thanks.
Was there anything that we didn't ask that you would have liked us to ask you that you wanted to showcase to our winners?
Well, yeah, I mean, really, I think, one of the things that's really interesting is that, and one of the things I'm actually talking about right now, one thing I'm actually working on right now is this idea of passive versus engaged fandom. So, how do you value the different type of fans? Because, right now, a lot of teams, are selling off pieces and their valuations are crazy and things like that. So one of the things I've been getting into is this idea about passive fandom versus active fandom. And it's been kind of interesting because, like me, I mentioned I'm a fan of the Miami Dolphins. Mm-hmm. So do I go to games? No. Do I own any Dolphins merch? No. Do I spend any money to travel to watch them play in another city? Again, no. How do I express my fandom? Right over there, I hang out on my couch and I watch them play. Whether it's, I watch them on TV, whether it's traditional TV, cable, satellites, streaming, whatever it is. So I'm a passive fan versus the fan that goes to games, buys licensed merch, gambles on the team, travels with, all this, how much more valuable are fans like that versus couch potatoes like me? And then how can I, as a team, convert Neil from passive fan to an active fan? How can I get Neil off his ass and come to a game live? What do I have to do in order to make that happen? And then how can I sustain that? So that's really one of the things we're looking at right now. I mean, I'm looking also sports philanthropy, another huge category that I never really even gave much thought to until somebody came to me and said, hey, it's a big business, dude. You should start measuring it. And guess what? I am, and it is, and there's a lot of people interested in the data. So, hey, before we go on, let me just say this. If you want to learn a little bit more about my business and what we do, come on, SBRnet.com. There's a lot of things that we've talked about are in front of the paywall, so you can get, some of this data. Look, you don't get the good stuff is behind the paywall. I'm not crazy, but there's a lot in front of the paywall. Number two is that we have a social media presence. On Instagram, it's at SBRnet Data. And, you can follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn, just at SBRnet. I think, right now, because we're a business to business type of situation, we focus a lot of our attention on LinkedIn. I do a lot on Instagram. I do stuff on Twitter, but I don't know what it is anymore. Mm-hmm. If somebody could explain to me what Twitter actually is at this point, I would understand it, but I don't. So we focused on Insta and also my first job in sports. We have our YouTube channel. We've got, obviously we're on all major podcasting platforms. Just type in my first job in sports and it comes up. And last episode we did was an interesting one. We interviewed a young lady that actually didn't go to college. Okay. And she said, look, college just wasn't for me, but sports was. So she planned a completely different strategy. And her name is Lainey. She works for a company called EHP Labs. They make supplements for working out and things like that. And you know what? College isn't for everyone. Right. I mean, I went, but it wasn't for everyone. Right. My daughter, in fact, my older daughter talks about how, she looks back on it. She said, you know what? I didn't really get a whole lot out of college. I mean, she's a smart girl. Don't get me wrong. But she said she didn't get a lot out of it. No, I did. I did. But
besides the kegger parties?
Oh, dude, I went to Syracuse in New York, and
okay, there you go.
The one thing that taught me how to do was party, because when it's snowing and it's like 20 degrees outside and the wind's blowing, the last thing you want to be is outside.
Yeah, no.
And
you got to stay warm. And
I kind of learned how to drink beer, and back then the drinking age was 18 in New York.
Yeah,
so I kind of took advantage of that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so you will be able to see in the description below all the information.
Yes.
To reach Neil and his company as well. So don't hesitate to go and reach out, and we love to expand our audience to yours and vice versa. So I'm looking forward to it. But thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You had fun.
Yeah. You're welcome. Hey, and if you're an entrepreneur, you're coming, you're doing a new business, you want to get some. I have a special place in my heart for entrepreneurs. Somebody else will pay the big bills. I would rather help you than worry about, and see you get off to a good start. So if entrepreneurs out there, if you've got a product, you've got a service, you want to understand, how it can work, please, don't be shy. And look, I reserve the right to say no to anything, but I can tell you when it comes to entrepreneurs, I say yes more than I say no.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great.
You're very welcome. Hey, guys, thank you so much for having me on, fellow Floridians. I know you guys are over on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast, but it's all about Florida, babe.
It is.
76 degrees, and it was sunny. It's dark now, but it was 76 degrees today, so come on down. The weather's beautiful.
Like I mentioned to you before we got on air, I used to live in the Midwest, so I will take this all day, every day.
Yeah. I mean, I was born in Philadelphia. I went to school in Syracuse, lived in Columbus, Ohio for a bunch of years and all that. Yeah. You know what? When I first moved down to Florida, I kind of didn't get it. Now that I've lived here over 25 years, I totally get it. You know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So,
not going anywhere.
Guys, thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate it. Can't wait to see, when the show's posted. And I really, sincerely appreciate you guys reaching out to me.
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you, Neil.
Anytime, Neil.
You're welcome.
All right. Take care.
You bet.